Warning: the following program may contain material not be suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised.
They say for every light in this world, there is a shadow waiting to reclaim it. We've been told what to believe, what to fear, and exactly where the boundaries of real end. But tonight, we're crossing those lines. From the whispers in the attic to the lights in the desert sky, and the entities that walk among us, we are stepping behind the veil. Transmitting from deep within the mountains of West Virginia, it's time to seek the truth. This is Let's Find Out with Diego. And now, here is your host, Diego the Podcaster.
On this episode of Let's Find Out, our guest is a MUFON field investigator and at the forefront of the UFO phenomenon, actively involved with some of the most prominent UFO disclosure leaders of our time. This latest cutting-edge research will take us into the world of plasmoids, new UFO reports, and the ever-growing mysteries about the suspected life on Mars. All this plus more. Please welcome our good friend and MUFON Massachusetts chapter field investigator, Jim Awrach. Jim, my friend, welcome back to Let's Find Out.
Thanks for having me again. Very cool stuff. Very cool to be here.
Yeah, a lot has changed since I last talked to you. And one of the biggest things, and I was so happy to hear about it, that you started your own show.
Yep. The UFO Report, YouTube, UFO-report, or UFOreport.com.
And we'll have the links in the description once the episode is released, also on the crawl. But my goodness, man, I mean, I was not expecting it, but I'm glad that you actually got your thing going on there. So what do you have there so far? I know I was looking through it, and there's a lot of stuff in there that perhaps some people may not be happy that's there. I know I am. I know you are, but there might be some in the field that perhaps may, I don't know, maybe say, man, you shouldn't have that up there, man. You crazy? You get any of that?
I do. And I got to tell you, it's a little baffling, Diego, especially since, now we're in the age of disclosure. And so witnesses are being encouraged instead of discouraged. And actually, I'd spoken to Timothy Phillips, former deputy director of Arrow, on a podcast of mine about 1 year ago. And he said that basically the same thing that's on Arrow's website, which is not only are witnesses encouraged, but now it's actually against federal law to harass, intimidate, or discourage reports. And it was really interesting. Just quick note on that when he was acting director of Arrow, he went so far as to provide all sorts of federal and local law enforcement protection for witnesses to have private interviews and disclosures. And one of the latest and greatest buzzwords that's been around forever, but everyone's always talking about it, SCIF. Not a skiff that you stand on like a raft. That's SKIFF. People call it that. That's not what it is. SCIF, sensitive, compartmentalized information facility, which is what most of the folks out there have been referring to and talk about it on all the disclosure shows. So when Tim Phillips went through all that trouble, and also I saw for myself on Arrow's website, it just kind of really baffles me why it is there are still organizations, really individuals at those organizations, not the organizations themselves, but individuals at organizations that discourage disclosure or want to continue to keep people in the dark. And it touches on, Diego, a lot of things that, as you remember, Luis Elizondo was saying, which there are people in DC and and other other locations in the country at high-profile organizations that believe these things are demons, or that acknowledgement of these things is contrary to the Old and New Testament. Therefore, shame on you. Don't talk about it. It's not true. And then there's other things too. As you know, everything always boils down to money, and this whole thing about people want to maintain the status quo and they want to keep all the goodies to themselves because they're making money off it. So all that rolled into one, and yep. And in short, we still run into brick walls sometimes, even though we're getting disclosure out the wazoo.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, because recently, within the last month or so, there's been a lot of information that has come out, and I don't know how to quite feel about it quite yet, my friend, because there are those that really liked what came out, and there are those who did not, more because they were disappointed.
Mm.
And I think they expect too much. In a sense, you're not going to get the gray, you're not going to get the Nordics, you're not going to get the pick whichever race is out there. You're not going to get a Polaroid of one shaking hands with Roosevelt either.
Right.
But you're going to see certain things that perhaps aren't supposed to be there, that for a long time nobody wanted to talk about, but now it's out there. And the second part of that, my friend, is I can understand why our leaders were at first not on board with releasing this information, but I think the population saw it. They're like, kind of, and they moved on. I don't know how you feel about what you've seen, but I talked to some folks about it, and they're kind of like, yeah, what else you got? I mean, right?
Yep. And there's all sorts of theories as to why, Diego. It's Avi Loeb impersonation, which Avi, if you're listening, you know that I like you, and I'm not discriminating. I mimic everybody, even myself, which I could do later if you want. That's just one of my habits. I like to mimic noises and voices. But as Avi Loeb, good friend of mine that I'd spoken with before, would say, this UFO phenomenon is a mixed bag, and it is. He's right. I mean, sometimes you get orbs, sometimes and you get plasmoids, which we're talking about. Sometimes you get interstellar meteors, although they seem out of place, or we're going to talk about renegade scientists. They've inspected some of these meteors or meteorites, and they've found traces of living organisms, which means that somewhere out there beyond Earth, there was bacteria or things like that. So a lot of people are looking for the holy grail of UFOs. The closest I've seen to that was when you had me on there last time, which was great, and we spoke about Gene Sticko's book, Engineering Infinity. So that brilliant Soviet era UFO reverse engineering scientist Valeris Chernohayev, to me, is still the UFO, let's say, inner workings holy grail. I've spoken to so many scientists and researchers since you and I had last spoke, and whenever what's that expression? Believe but verify, or whatever it is, or trust
but verify.
Yeah. And so then, as engineers and scientists, that's what we do. And as far as I know, nobody, including me, has disproven it. But to actually see, the classical flying saucer, I will say, I have a podcast coming on Saturday at 7, YouTube, UFO-report. And what's interesting about it is this particular sighting, which is one of many declassified videos by Department of War, aka Department of Defense. You've got 3 lights or orbs flying in a triangular formation, And the interesting thing about that is it's very similar to what Luis Elizondo had published in his first book, and also I had seen him in Boston last year, and what he was talking about when these things fly in formation, how they join together, what it means, gravitational fields, anti-gravity, transcending time-space fabric. And it's really interesting that this particular one that I'm going to show, you've got 3 orbs flying in formation. And if you look at the surrounding, I don't know if you call it air or whatever, surrounding ambient, looks very similar to what we've cited in the past with triangular UFO craft, which is exactly what Luis Elizondo had been talking about for a few years now. So I mean, there are some aha things, but it's not as subtle and obvious as you would expect, because no one's like circling it, highlighting it, and saying, "Look, this is what we've seen before." And so it's, you're right. As Avi would say, it's a mixed bag. And the Tic Tac. Okay, so there's some things released that look similar to that, but nothing like you said with the we don't see Greys or Nordics, and we don't see as of yet, a video with the flying saucer. You're right.
I mean, at least maybe not quite yet. And for non-scientific people like me and people that I know, I mean, there are far smarter people in the world than me, a majority of them. To tell you the truth, other than an alien savior landing in the middle of the White House, or I don't care, London or wherever, Buckingham Palace, wherever they decides to land, right?
Yeah.
Outside of that, what would be some better resources or interviews or even documentaries that somebody who is an untrained scientist would benefit from watching or listening, that would give them the information perhaps that they're looking for?
Well, there is, yeah, that's really a cool question. So there is actually, you have access to the entire New Force database. That's NUFORC, National UFO Reporting Center. I believe it's either .com or .org. And so you can see historically, and you can sort it and everything. Then there's also free access to Americans for Safe Aerospace, which is Lieutenant Ryan Graves. I think that's also asa.org. If not, it's very close. That's easy to Google. And there's also, if you just do a Google for MUFON, you can go on their site, and at the very least, they offer you different free access. Like they'll give you, I think, a few dozen of the latest and greatest UFO reports for you to do a little research and to see what kind of sightings are out there. And I will say, for example, with MUFON, what I do like about it is most of those events that I'm aware of, you don't actually have to be a member to go to or participate in the meetings. So I kind of like that. Usually it's a volunteer organization, so basically means nonprofit. And you just look up, and you if you go to MUFON's website and you say, okay, contact whatever state you're in, and they give you a couple of people's names and emails and phone numbers, just if you want to get involved or you want to go to a meeting or something. And typically the only reason why they charge you in most cases is because there's food there, or because they're going to have a special guest appearance and they need to take care of his travels. Most of the MUFON meetings that I've run, it's been kind of like, well, if you're going to take food, then please pay for it. Or if there's some sort of expense and people are cost sharing, do that. But I mean, if you just want to show up and look and listen, there's really no charge, for at least for most of the meetings I'm aware with. So between in-person meetings and those different websites, is there's really a lot of resources out there, and it's so nice. And of course, Department of War, their their website as well. They've got, I lost count of how many. I want to say something like they've got 24 pages now, because the first tranche was 17 pages, and I want to say they added at least 7 more pages, but I want to say like 50 more videos. So that's, and Arrow, I think it was arrow.mil. They've got a good website, and I've actually found similarities as to between some of their unsolved cases compared to cases that I've personally investigated, and I said, "Oh wow, that's very similar to the case that I just looked at." So that's the good news, and you'll notice, unless I'm wrong, and viewers are welcome to comment or whatever, contact. Unless I'm wrong, it does seem like the United States is leading the way. A lot of other countries have said so.
And that's great in a way now, because we could be the leader in exposing this information and people learning from it. Now, as I had a conversation just yesterday with somebody about the release of this information. And the whole thing is like this. Here's the out, in a way. They promised you footage of UFOs. They did not promise you extraterrestrials or aliens. So you got to really separate these things, because one, they're not all the same thing,
Sure.
But I'm happy we have what we have so far. And let's do something here, because you mentioned the term earlier. We were talking about it offline also, with renegade scientists.
Yeah.
And my first question about these scientists, well, two really, are they all from the same country? And two, are they in any danger?
Yeah, excellent point. Excellent talking point. Okay, Diego. So very interesting. I'm sure there are many renegade scientists. Well, for example, look at Valeris. We're talking about him. Also, of course, Bob Lazar. They're also, so I'm sure there's a lot of them. We just don't. Maybe once in a while they're mentioned. I can't think off the top of my head, but one group of renegade scientists. And when I say renegade, I don't mean in a bad way. I basically mean scientists that are not conforming to what they're told to do. They're told, don't release this information, don't publish it in scientific journals, or else. And so there are scientists that join, for example, Dr. Ron Joseph. That's RHAWN Joseph. He has colleagues. A couple of them are over in Italy, like Dr. I pronounce it Dr. Riccio, although Dr. Joseph believes it's pronounced Rizzo, Rizzo. Then there's Dr. Armstrong over in the United K, and Dr. Rizzo's over in Italy. So colleagues that have joined forces across the world. Dr. Joseph used to be in California, and we could get into why he's not, but now he's over in Thailand. God bless him. He's living like a multimillionaire now, because he was explaining to me how the value of the U.S. dollar is like maybe I don't know, 6 or 7 times what you can buy over in the United States. So good for him. It was uncomfortable, so he moved there, and now he lives like a king. Good. But so that's international colleagues linked together that publish us in peer-reviewed scientific journals. And as far as are they in danger, I would say financially, possibly, meaning that they've been financially threatened or financially wrecked, or their reputation has been sabotaged. as far as I know, no death threats. And there are, it depends who you speak to. If you look at the folks that testified on Capitol Hill, then they will tell you that they have been directly threatened by, let's just say, by individuals that they believe were hired by different people in the government. On the other hand, if you speak to other people, and everybody's experience is different. I've spoken to former government officials who said their experience is even they were threatened, but their experience was that the threats usually come from people that are either delusional or people that need some sort of psychiatric assistance, and they sort of, the pressures of life or stress, or maybe they're delusional about what's going on with reality. And in those cases, their experience was no one in the government. To me, that makes sense, because that's just not what the government typically does. Now, I mean, there are things in the government. If you've got security clearance, then you're bound by non-disclosure agreements, and you're bound by different degrees of secrecy. And if you divulge any information, then yeah, you could get fined, you can go to jail, you could, I mean, there's also, you could lose your property. I'm not sure about being executed, but I mean, you could be tried for treason for the simple reason that you're giving away government secrets. So to me, that makes more sense than the government offing its own people. But I can only, that's from my perspective. I could tell you from Dr. Joseph's perspective that there are people in NASA. So not the organization itself. There are certain people in the organization that have ideology different than his, in a similar way that Luis Elizondo, when he was in the Pentagon in ATIP, right, Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, people would come up to him and either give him hate messages or threat messages or whisper something, because their ideology was these things are the devil or these things are evil, don't mess with them or else. So, but that didn't mean that the whole Pentagon was against them. It just meant that there are people there. So I feel that's the same thing that's going on with NASA, and that's what happened, unfortunately, to Dr. Joseph. The other scientists, like in Italy and in the Dr. Armstrong in the United Kingdom, I'm not really sure what they've been facing, but I can tell you that their work it's credible work. I mean, I've reviewed some of it myself and podcasts about it, and it's good old fashioned math and science, and the conclusions they come up with. If you want to get into it at some point, Diego, but the conclusions they come up with are really interesting about life on Mars. Questions that people have been asking since forever, and things that have been proven since the 70s, yet scientists were discredited, and their reputation ruined, funding threatened or taken away. And it's only now in the year 2026 that NASA or whoever it is within that organization is saying, okay, it's okay if you hint a little bit at life, but don't just come out and spill the beans, for whatever reason that is.
I mean, Mars has fascinated humans for centuries and centuries, because there's got to be a reason why, and I think we know why. Of the possibility of life once there, a whole civilization that might have been wiped out by whatever um, natural catastrophe happened there. Who knows? And then for some reason we got lucky. Now, talking about Mars, one of the biggest things when I was growing up was you can see the image of a face on Mars, and I think that was very hot for a long time. That where there's structures, this and that. Now we're doing something a little bit different, because plasmoids. I just love the word plasmoids, and I can just I was talking to my wife about it yesterday as I was reading over the notes. She goes, "Plasma." I was like, "Yeah, check this out." I started giving it a little backstory. She goes, "Man, I need to listen to this episode because I want to learn more about it from Jim."
Uh,
So
cool.
give us the baby steps real quick on
Sure.
plasmoids. Where did that definition come from? And I'm assuming these are the same Renegade scientists that have been studying this as well.
Yep. Yep. You got it. So they published some really interesting papers um, on these plasmoids, which, in a nutshell, on the verge of outer space, where we have the International Space Station and where we have spacecraft go. So you're talking about the previous space shuttle missions. Um, there is another form of life. And the reason why it's not scary, Diego, is because we discover new forms of life all the time, if not monthly, maybe even weekly or more in the deep ocean. So it only makes sense that, oh, look at this life form. We haven't seen that since almost the Stone Ages. We thought that was extinct. Or, okay, new type of bird. Okay, so if you go further up into what's known as the thermosphere, which is at the edge of the Earth just before outer space begins. And there's all sorts of terminology. It's called the ionosphere because they intermix, and it's called the magnetosphere. So basically, the very, very verge of planet Earth, where you're pretty much in outer space or on the verge of it, and you get the International Space Station or whatever craft. There's a life form. This life form was first. I'm pretty sure it was first observed through NASA footage. This NASA footage is a compilation of, so Dr. Joseph, very fascinated in Mars, and years ago, what he did was, through a Freedom of Information Act, he requested video footage of Mars. And his belief is just, fancy term, serendipitously, whoever was over at NASA said, okay, this guy wants videos, whatever. He receives these reels. Do you remember back in the day when you go to the video, the movie theater, they'd put this huge circular reel on a
Yes.
projector, and then they play it and the tape goes, and sometimes you even have to wait because they had to switch over projectors and shit. You remember all that?
Yeah.
So he gets these humongous reels, reels and reels, and he's like, what the heck is this? And so he converts it to video, and he's looking on there, and he's like, this isn't Mars. And he sees it's all sorts of NASA footage of these plasmoids, another type of life form. And it's interesting because during this footage, sometimes they're following these things around. Other times, if they notice it, they're like, oh, we don't want people to talk about it, or we don't want it to be disclosed for whatever reason. There could be all sorts of reasons. They zoom out so that they're blurred, or they change the focus so that instead they're focusing more on the space station or more on their experiments out there. And it's really interesting. There's some footage where you can clearly see the NASA logo on there, which again, it came from a Freedom of Information Act from NASA, but you can see the NASA logo on there, and they are discussing these plasmoids in a thermosphere, and that they're moving around. They're definitely not reflections. They're not, say, explainable objects. Then there's even one of the, I believe it was one of the space station missions. They're talking about a plasmoid that's moving past different windows. And then there's something called the NASA STS. I think it means Space Tether System. You might be familiar with it, but what it was an experiment where they ran a wire or wires through this thermosphere, which part of it touches the magnetosphere. So what happens is when you have a wire, a metal conductor, go through a magnetic field, it produces voltage. So then if you close a circuit, you've got electricity. So they were doing this as an experiment to see new ways to generate electricity for whatever reasons. Cool idea. So while they're doing this, and you see this humongous long tether, you see these plasmoids on the order of several meters, if not kilometers long, and they're all attracted to this space tether because of the energy. And also, Dr. Joseph documents that there's different types of plasmoids that are in the thermosphere. Some graze along, almost like a cow grazing the field. Others are hunters, where they actually pursue the grazers or other plasmoids, and they don't kill them, but as they pass through them, it's like an exchange of energy. So they're just living off of energy of others. And then there's donut-shaped ones. Trying to think then there's storm chasers. So in other words, they feed off of energy, plasmoids, and we can, if you like, I could tell you what a plasmoid is, but there's other plasmoids that they call them storm chasers. So it's up in a thermosphere. And then when there's a storm, so there's whatever, thunder and lightning, they'll dive down and they'll just, they'll feed on some of the electricity and then go back up to where they came from. So very simple form of life. Dr. Joseph and his colleagues compare them to almost like simple cell life forms, or maybe multiple cell life forms, but nonetheless, they call them pre-life or a simple form of life. And it's cool stuff.
I mean, it kind of reminds me of, what are those? And I'm going to show myself here because I can't say words correctly.
Okay.
Is it extremophiles? Or those things are in the ocean. They can live in these ridiculous environments, but these, I guess they're kind of like, let's say, germs or microfish.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. And there's a Dr. Joseph does a really good analogy between microscopic or just say like really, really tiny marine life and how they congregate towards each other. He does an analogy between that in his video on the left and then the plasmoids on the right. And basically he's demonstrating the similarities of these similar life forms. And the Renegade science part of it was, he and his colleagues did some really good work and publications, including Dr. Rudy Schild. He's an emeritus professor from the Harvard Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics in Cambridge, Mass, and a few other of their colleagues. Very, very highly respected scientists. Had these things peer reviewed by other scientists, published in a few different journals, and the response they got was, I guess, indirectly. And this is secondhand information, although I have no reason to doubt it. Indirectly, there were individuals, again, not the organization. The organization is great. Now, that NASA, as a matter of fact, used to fund my own small business research. Great organization and the things they do. But there are some individuals there, and this is against their ideology. So those individuals indirectly got a message to these scientists saying, hey, knock it off. Okay, you published it and people have seen it. We know it's out there. It's great. Just leave it alone. If you leave it alone, we'll leave you alone. And in the case of Dr. Rudy Schild, he left it alone. He said, okay, all right, I'll leave it alone. Case of Dr. Joseph, I like to refer to him as a scientist with balls, and I'll tell you, he's freaking hysterical. He has you laughing and coughing up a lung. He's so funny. He's got a good sense of humor, but he has a set of nads. He'll call them straight out, and he's said that in some of my interviews about exactly what he thinks of them, and he kept going, and he published that video on the plasmoids. And so his belief, and I don't have any reason to doubt him, was the government put him in such a position, and he believes it came from NASA. And my belief is, yeah, it came from those individuals in NASA that basically said, hey, look, this guy crossed the line or whatever. He's not cooperating. Make it difficult for him to do things with his own property. He wants to put a fence. Don't let him do that. Come up with bullshit excuses. Oh, now get this one. You ready, Diego? Amazon that's Jeff Bezos, is it not?
Yes.
Okay. He's involved with space projects funded by NASA, right? If I get that correct.
I have no clue. Okay, but yeah, that sounds possible.
Yeah. So guess what happened to Dr. RJ, Ron Joseph? And again, this has come from RJ, but I have no reason to doubt him at all. He's proven to be nothing but 100% credible. So Amazon continued to ship his books and publications, right? But they didn't pay him for it. So they owe him a shit ton of money, right? And so, this has come from Dr. Joseph. So I'm just repeating what he said, but I have no reason to doubt him. And I think that's too bad. But the idea is somebody or a group of people have an ideology that don't do this, or else we don't want this being revealed. And so the end result is the guy gets, there's a lot of false information about him out there. And, he gets ripped off, and he's not able to collect royalties from his books. And financially, things become more difficult. So he's like, all right, screw it. I'll just move over to Thailand, and things are more affordable over there anyway. Live like a king, which is good for him. Although it is kind of horrible to be exiled like that.
Self-exile. And as I'm thinking about talking about the billionaires, these millionaires, that if you have enough money, you can find any kind of information you want to. The minute you said something, it brought me into a story. It has nothing to do with what we're talking about, but go with me on this. I'll end it quickly, I hope.
Sure.
Jackie Gleason, big celebrity back in the day, and he probably was a millionaire at his time. Was friends with Richard Nixon. And supposedly there was a story about that he hung out with Richard Nixon, and Nixon divulged some UFO information to Jackie. And of course, he tells people. But I figured if you have enough power, enough notoriety, you're going to learn something no matter what. Someone's going to tell you something. But that's the best story I have. Jackie Gleason's story just came to mind. Now, talking to the point of what we're talking about. Speaking of the reels that were sent to this gentleman, I can imagine that they got the orders. Yeah, go ahead and send this guy these reels. He extracts this information. He finds it somewhere in there and says, which of you assholes sent him these reels? Because
yeah, and look, he obtained it through a Freedom of Information Act. So therefore, he didn't do anything wrong.
No.
And that's not even what he asked for. He asked for stuff on Mars, and then when he got this stuff, great. It was even better.
He accidentally got something pretty awesome, and my gosh, I could only be there when that clerk's getting the beat down from the boss. Like, why did you do this? But anyway, so
by the way, Diego, these Dr. Joseph believes that in the first tranche, not the latest, but the one that came out May 8, that 96% of the pictures and videos are in fact plasmoids. And we were talking about, gee, nothing about Greys or Nordics or whatever. Well, if you combine Dr. Joseph's work with Dr. Schild from Harvard, their publications, and then Dr. Joseph's video, that's our first, in my opinion, confirmed evidence of non-human life. Although we see non-human life every day, don't we, Diego? I mean, dolphins communicate and they're not humans, right?
Correct.
And plasmoids are, they have some intelligence. They hunt energy and stuff, but the difference is, life that's not on Earth. Well, so that's the first non-human intelligence, albeit simple intelligence, not on Earth. Plasmoids that go into Earth, but nonetheless.
Well, you bring something very interesting there, what you just said with the plasmoids. Very simple life form, show a sense of intelligence somehow. Has anybody been able to communicate with these things?
Really interesting question. So thus we delve into plasmoids versus orbs versus UAPs. So in some cases, plasmoids and orbs are the same thing. In other cases, some researchers have documented that they believe orbs are a type of nanotechnology. That would be John and Jerry Tedesco. They were talking about that before. So these, communication with the plasmoids, I could tell you with orbs, and sometimes they're synonymous. This is a heavy one. This is heavy. I guess there's different types. There's communication with, or the sense of communication with, things that look like plasmoids or orbs, and then there's just these plasmoids themselves, and what are they doing? So you might remember, and I did send you a link to a preview of the plasmoid video. That's like a 6 or 7 minute video. On that video, it shows different things that happened, like in 19 right after the U.S. Started doing the atomic bomb. We had, as you remember, a huge UFO appearance over the U.S. Capitol, right? And they looked like plasmoids. And something that looked very similar to those was actually taken in an actual photograph. So instead of all the newspapers with the cartoons depicting it, in 1952, there was an official U.S. Coast Guard picture taken in Salem, Mass. That's in that short video that I sent, and that was published in one of Dr. Joseph's papers. And they're plasmoids. In my belief, they're plasmoids. Those things were flying in an aggressive formation. There were 4 of them, where one was the lead, and then the other 3 were kind of behind it. Now, when I say aggressive formation, it could have been aggressive as in they were pissed off, or it could have been aggressive as in they could sense something was going on with nukes and they wanted to see what was going on. Or it could have been aggressive as in, oh my God, we're going crazy. We don't know what's up here. We don't feel comfortable. But they were aggressive. They weren't passive. They weren't just kind of like a group of 4 plasmoids wandering around. They were in a formation. And that was in 1952, within the same week, or not, maybe even days, of when the U.S. had commenced with more nuke testing. And that was in Salem, Mass, official U.S. Coast Guard picture. So that's one form of communication, Diego, because basically they're telling us that they don't like what's going on. I mean, they don't look happy about it. They don't look threatening. They weren't burning up buildings and things like that, but they're basically saying, we're not happy with this. So that's one type. The other type of communication, of course, you always get reports. When I perform field investigations, a lot of times witnesses will tell me that it's almost always a sense of either elation or happiness or calmness or a sense of everything is going to be okay when they have an orb that they witnessed, or an orb that's there at the same time. Doesn't I've never come across a report personally that that I've dealt with that where a witness said that they felt threatened by an orb. Although you have those from Skinwalker Ranch, I've never had anything like that.
And then because you mentioned a video that you sent, and I know that we have something planned to play here in a little bit. So if you want to go ahead and play that now. And do you want to go ahead and introduce it, or you just want to take charge and then play it and then just walk us through it?
Sure. Yeah, and I wish I could figure out how to share the the audio, but
That's okay, but I'm gonna go ahead and play it now, and then you just walk us through. You're the host now for the next few minutes.
all right, cool.
Stand by. Here we go.
All right, cool. There we go. So this was taken from outside of a space station mission. It says in a video exactly which one it is, and the point is the astronauts were saying that a plasmoid was actually passing windows 1 through 5. You can see that on the monitor there, and now you can see how the plasmoid is passing the space station in that video. So this is a compilation of what Dr. Ron Joseph had put together with those NASA's plasmoid videos he obtained from the Freedom of Information Act. And you can see in the upper right corner of that, you can see the NASA logo. I've enhanced that in other podcasts, but you can certainly see it's NASA, although if you do some enhancing, you can see that easier. So you see 3 plasmoids, and then NASA goes through this, and they're discussing, they're saying, oh no, it's not an illusion, it's not a reflection, they're real. Now what we have here is you could see that you have this long thing in the middle that is actually from a space shuttle mission with what's known as the space tether system, and they were conducting experiments. We talked about a little bit earlier, trying to get electricity passing through something with a long wire or wires, and you can see all these plasmoids are attracted to it because they feed off of energy.
And that's very interesting, Jim, because when somebody would look at this and say it just looks like space debris or dust in space, but it's not acting like debris or dust. It's actually acting like it's got purpose.
Exactly. Exactly. And what Dr. Joseph does in this right here, Diego, is he's showing to the left, he's showing plasmoids, and then to the right, he's showing microscopic life, and he's just making the analogy that he's saying, hey, look, you can see that this primitive yet intelligent life form behaves similar to what we have in deep in the ocean. And that's the analogy right there that he makes. So you got a plankton on the left with other microbes, and
that is something there. I mean, it's almost identical behavior.
Yeah, absolutely. And he, Dr. Joseph, hypothesizes that maybe they're when they accelerate, maybe they're accelerating. Well, they accelerate fast, and by the way, they make sharp angle turns. I'm sure that sounds familiar to all the folks, because that's what UFOs and UAPs do: sharp angle turns, extremely high speed acceleration. He hypothesizes maybe accelerating at the speed of light. And what Dr. Joseph is showing here is this is the remnants of a hurricane. And so the remnants, it has an occasional electrical storm. And he shows, and this again is from NASA footage, how these storm chasers are feed off of electricity. So they go from the thermosphere and they dive down. So they're flying in formation. You can see them glowing and pulsing.
Yeah.
They just fed off of an electrical storm. So right there is direct evidence. Well, I mean, this whole thing is evidence, but you could see, UFOs. Oh my God, they're taking over the world. Well, they're not little green men and flying saucers, but these UAPs are actually plasmoids, which Dr. Joseph he did a lot of computer enhancement with at least the first tranche of UFO files, and he determined that 96% of them are plasmoids, and here's two of them from way back when in the NASA footage, going after electricity in a storm. This self-illuminating structure could not be reflecting sunlight as it was approaching from nighttime in the west.
And now this clarifies a lot of questions that I've had before, my friend. And I'm going to go ahead and bring us back up here.
Okay.
Because my biggest complaint, which now I always learn from you, so this is why we have you on the show, where they've shown footage of, I'll say, Tic Tacs or something labeled UFO, and it looks very similar to that. Some are bigger, some are smaller than others, but my thing is, why is the camera so fuzzy, and why can't it focus on a ship? Not so fast, Jack, because now it could be a plasmoid. Or I'm convinced it is a plasmoid at this point from watching what I just saw.
I agree. There are other explanations, and some theorize that the U.S. has different type of advanced technology, and that's really what the Tic Tac was. And other people say no, and then the officials disclosing it just say no. It's an unknown. Dr. Joseph believes that the USS Nimitz was a plasmoid, and I agree with him. He also analyzed some footage from the Mars Curiosity rover, and with some computer enhancement, looks like he found an object in the sky of Mars that looks very similar to the Tic Tac. In other words, an object surrounded by plasma, and then there's something on the inside of the object. So one way or another, it seems that plasma or plasmoids seem to be, a lot of what we've been seeing. Certainly not all. I mean, there's other things out there and other things that we have seen, but plasmoids are a big part of it.
And with the plasmoids, different sizes, of course, some microscopic, some bigger than others. They're in our atmosphere. They're everywhere. Could any of those be inside of our bodies?
Boy, that's a good one. Yeah, you got me on that one. The only I honestly don't know, but what I can tell you is it has been scientifically proved. Actually, it's a science fact that when we meditate, depending on the type of meditation, you can actually feel uh, different points of energy in your body, and you can actually feel energy flow in some cases from the top of your head all the way out to your feet. That's some type of tapping meditation. I've done it myself for the purposes of meditation, and then I felt actually an energy release. That's consistent with some from the India culture with the chakras, different energy levels in the body. So that all fits together, and so it's a science fact that we do have different energy levels in our body, and also we have some brain waves. These scientists have proven that some of our brain waves actually extend really far, not to just like in front of us to scanners, but I mean like way out there. And so from that perspective, I can say that that plasmoids have electromagnetic energy. In other words, they have a magnetic field that contains their electric energy, and at the same time, it's self-sustaining. So one feeds the other. And in the human being, we have electricity, and therefore we generate electrical and magnetic energy, brain waves or whatnot, energy flowing throughout our body. So there's similarity. Now, whether or not we have a plasmoid within us or something, there's all sorts of ideas out there, and that's definitely something I don't know. There is one mystery that I think I came to conclusion on, which was I'd asked you if some of the orb sightings in haunted houses are the same thing as plasmoids. You might remember that, and I tracked down some researchers, and nobody really had an answer. And then I came to the conclusion one day, based on orb behavior and on plasmoid behavior. Not all, I don't think all of them, but I think some of them, like you go to a haunted mansion or haunted woods or something, I think some of them are one and the same. So I think it's like saying here's a flying squirrel, but over there that's a bird that flies. That's probably a crude analogy, but I think in some cases they're one and the same. That's about all I got on that.
No, and it's not far fetched because I yet again, being that we do a podcast and you do your research, you interview a lot of people. Sometimes these stories answer some of these questions that we have. Because the other week, someone was talking about they're usually they're Bigfoot researchers and investigators. They go out there in the field in the woods, and everyone out of the times they've had encounters or experience, not encounter as far as face to face with the Bigfoot, or as far as hearing them or seeing them walk or in the shadows. Sometimes they see orbs as well. I don't know if there's a connection or not. Maybe there is, but it's not the first time where I've heard about orbs being out in the forest, going out there investigating. But now, I mean, this is a mind blowing episode so far, because now you help me understand a lot of things. So the natural follow up question for you, with all that we've talked about, and things probably that we haven't talked about, maybe in another episode down the road we will. How do you sleep at night? How do you turn this off?
Yeah. Isn't that interesting? Well, it's really an enthrallment and a fascination and a passion. So I try so hard to my media, the phone or computer, whatever. I try very hard to do it in bed during the work week and just save this for the weekend, because otherwise I'll find myself up till like 2 or 3 a.m. It's not easy. It's very, very addictive. So at least if I do it in bed and I snooze off or something, then I got some work done on it, but at the same time I got my sleep in. For me, it's more of an enthrallment and a passion and an addiction. Some people, it freaks them out and it scares them, especially, some people have been through some really, really horrific experiences. I'm happy that, I've had a few experiences. Only one of them was an actual UAP sighting during one of my favorite investigations, where I saw it for myself. I'm like, holy crap, this stuff is real. But it was a positive experience. There was a hitchhiker effect, but nonetheless, it wasn't scary. It was fascinating, and it became a little bit annoying, a little bit of a nuisance after a while. But it wasn't like scaring or like, it wasn't like pulling my hair going, oh my God. But other other than those things, yeah, thankfully I haven't had problems falling asleep.
Excellent.
But yeah,
because sometimes there's been stories I've heard that kind of didn't help me as far as falling asleep pretty quickly. In fact, there was one story that disturbed me so much it took me weeks just to get out of my brain. But I mean, I'm thinking
well,
about
that'll be
it
like
now.
the Skinwalker Ranch stuff, probably something like that. I would think.
It was more of a Bigfoot story about killing a dog.
Oh,
and yeah, it does. It hit me right in the
yeah,
old. Yeah. So I was like, oh, and I'm just like, I'm a big dog lover. So
that would bother anybody. I mean, anybody
yeah.
who likes animals, even if you've never had a dog, absolutely. I agree. Yeah, those things are. Which, I mean, Skinwalker Ranch, that stuff happened, and I agree with you. Actually, I don't know if I lost sleep over it, but I used to watch all those specials on Skinwalker Ranch, including dogs getting vaporized or whatever, and yeah, horrible stuff. It's kind of weird that the whole abduction thing is. I couldn't comment on it just because I haven't experienced it. I have investigated cases with people who have been abducted, and that's unfortunate because those folks, it really does mess with their lives for some time. And MUFON has a experience resource team to help people either get connected with counselors that could at least try to soothe them a little bit, or you've got some MUFON field investigators that have had other experiences, so sometimes it helps if you can share your experience with other people who've been through something. But I mean, I agree with you. Yeah, depending on what you've gone through, it could certainly be difficult to fall asleep at night. I'm with you there.
Yeah, and you kind of helped me answer one question there, as far as if anybody has any experiences or want some sort of an ear to talk to ease them. You mentioned MUFON is a good resource for that. But now for the magic question for you, my friend. For our good friends, the listeners of Let's Find Out, who maybe want to share a UFO story with you, or some people out there that may they have a book or a documentary they want to promote, how can they get a hold of you? And also, where can we listen to UFO Report?
Oh, cool. Yeah, thanks. So good way to get a hold of me is if you go onto YouTube, it's simply at UFO-report. Another way is if you go onto the website, it's UFO-report.com. And on that one, you can report a sighting or experience, attach files, and submit it. And you could also just send me an email, and that one is my. You could use this. A good Gmail to use is UFO.report1@gmail.com. So that's UFO.report, the number 1 at Gmail.
Excellent. And if you don't mind, folks, just like I did 10 minutes before we started this broadcast, I subscribed myself on the YouTube channel. So now that for my trips to and from work, I will be listening to the UFO report. And I suggest you do the same. Jim, always a pleasure having you on the show. And I know that let's not go a year without talking. Let's bring you back later this year, because I know a lot more stuff's going to be released. You'll have more awesome guests on your shows. You're going to be sharing a lot of interesting stories with me, of course.
Oh, cool. Yeah, very cool. Yeah, I appreciate it. I look forward to that.
Thank you, my friend.
Copyright Diego the Podcaster. All content for Let's Find Out is the property of Diego the Podcaster and is served directly from our servers with no modification, redirects, or rehosting. All celebrity impersonators are paid performers. The impersonated celebrities do not endorse or promote any views or opinions expressed by our guests, Diego the Podcaster, or Let's Find Out. The information shared on Let's Find Out with Diego is provided on an as-is basis, with no guarantees of completeness, accuracy, usefulness, or timeliness.